Hey everyone, welcome to the devlog number 4 for Gedonia 2. Today we will talk about different game modes planned for the game and my current plans for the dungeons and endgame. In the first Gedonia, there was 3 modes: main open world, arena mode, and randomly generated dungeons mode. For each one of them, you had to create separate characters and have different save files. In Gedonia 2, all game modes will have shared type of character, so you will be able to play in every mode you like with any of your characters and also join other players' games. Before I start talking about game modes in details, I need to say that the amount of players in each mode is very much limited by the amount of networking traffic during gameplay. Gedonia 2 will have peer-to-peer connections networking, so with certain game modes, with a lot of NPCs on screen, the amount of players possible in the game will be lower. I also want to say that everything is still very much up in the air and things always might change later down the development. With all that out of the way, let's talk about game modes planned for Gedonia 2. The first mode will be, of course, the main open world portion of the game. In this mode, you will explore the world of Gedonia 2, complete quests and main storyline, explore different dungeons, all the good stuff. The amount of possible players will be from 1 to 4, and the difficulty and rewards will scale depending on the amount of players on the server. Second mode will be the arena mode. In this mode, I plan to have up to 5 players in a game, who will fight different waves of enemies with the difficulty increasing each wave. Unlike the first game, you won't be able to buy equipment in this mode, and you won't be able to get any experience from enemies. So this mode will be more so to test different builds in action, see how many waves you can beat and maybe get some cosmetic rewards. The amount and power of the enemies will also scale with the amount of players in the game. The third mode will be called an Eternal Dungeon. This mode will be a huge, epic dungeon in which a huge group of players will fight an epic boss. Basically my version of a raid dungeon from an MMO. I plan to have up to 8 players in the game in this mode. The difficulty of the boss will not scale for the amount of players and will always stay fixed, but each boss further down the dungeon will be harder and harder. The first batch of bosses will be designed for a group of 8 players around level 30 to 35, which means that it could be killed by 4 players with level 50 characters, or even 1 mad skilled player in epic gear. No one forbids you to play this mode in single player, the choice is up to you. You will probably get stumped, but hey, it will be like Dark Souls, right? The last mode will be called the Town Square and will basically be a social hub where you could meet other players, trade, compare your characters and just socialize. I plan to have a few social minigames there and will probably aim to get at least 15 players in one game. One of the best type of content in the original Gedonia were different dungeons in the game. Some of my favorite and most complex mechanics I've ever made in all my career in game development were there. For example, the Desert Temple in which I've basically made a bunch of dungeon layers piled on top of each other, and activated one of them depending on the pattern activated by players. I gotta tell you, debugging this was a nightmare. I can't count the amount of times the beetle enemies were appearing in the wrong layers and attack me from the walls. In Gedonia 2, I plan to continue this approach to development. Each dungeon in the game will be a handcrafted adventure, with unique mechanics, puzzles, enemies and storyline. However, I plan to incorporate a way to replay these dungeons on higher levels, with increased difficulty and better rewards, and also some unique content. For example, at the start of the dungeon, in the starting zone, you will have a stone plate with a rune slot. You complete a basic version of the dungeon around level 5 to 7 and go on to play the rest of the game. Then, sometime around level 40, you get to craft or loot an epic rune, which then you can return and put into this slot, and the dungeon respawns with new, harder bosses, epic loot rewards, new enemy encounters, or even whole new, previously hidden dungeon wings opening up with unique content or even storylines. Each rune will have different properties. For example, Rune of Fire not only unlock harder bosses, but also spawn different fire elementals around the dungeon, or create lava in certain places, making platforming challenges harder, for example. Now, this idea isn't new, but I still think that with a good implementation and a lot of unique content for each difficulty, it could make an endgame for the game much more exciting. So that's all for today, folks. Thank you for your support, stay tuned for more devlogs, and subscribe to the channel. Goodbye.